to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
What is up, everybody? We have an exciting show for you today. I know I don't look like a familiar face, but we're going to talk about some familiar topics. We're going to talk about why Victory Day is so important, not just for Russia, but for the entire world. But we're also going to delve into why it's even necessary. We're also going to talk about the fact that Yemen and Donald Trump and Israel, for some reason, can't get on the same page. We're also going to talk about the escalations between India and Pakistan. And our special guest today will enlighten us about issues internationally, because we're going to have on Cruse from Revolutionary Blackout Network and Fiorella Isabel from Truthwire. My name's Niko House, standing in for George Galloway, and you are listening to the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
So some of you may have already been privy to the fact that today is considered VE Day for the majority of Europe. It's a day to celebrate victory against the Nazis in World War II. But tomorrow, the 9th, is a day that the rest of the world, and really even the Allies, should be celebrating probably more so than today, which is Victory Day, where there will be a huge parade in Russia to celebrate their victory against the Nazis. Now, if you've probably been paying attention over the last 4 years, you've probably realized that for some reason, the rest of Western Europe seems to have forgotten why Russia has special privileges when it comes to claiming a victory day against Nazis and Nazi Germany. Because it was Russia that lost 27 million people, but it was also Russia that was the reason the Allies were even able to claim victory. And it was Russia who took the brunt of the bruises that came during World War II because of their unique position and the fact that Hitler realized at a certain point he couldn't win unless he took out Russia. And I find it interesting that as VE Day is being celebrated in Germany, England, and all over Western Europe, Russian flags are being banned from use. German police have literally banned Russian flags, guys. I know, it's kind of weird to celebrate a victory against Nazis. It's weird to celebrate a victory in World War II without acknowledging the USSR or Russia, but literally paraphernalia from the USSR has been banned in Germany. So in England, Ukraine flags are allowed. In fact, there are Ukrainian soldiers marching alongside British soldiers in solidarity with one another. Now, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge the irony of British soldiers walking alongside a neo-Nazi-led military on Victory Day. A Victory Day, or a VE Day rather, that's supposed to celebrate victory against Nazis. I don't know if they realize the irony, but here I definitely do. Now, as important as it is to acknowledge why Victory Day is so important to Russia, I think it's even more important to acknowledge why we even have to have a Victory Day, why Russia had to lose 27 million people. And it's because the very people that have removed Russia from the World Cup, the very people that have removed Russia from competing officially in the Olympics, the very people that have removed or have tried to remove Russia and the USSR from history are largely the cause of the war. They're largely the reason that there is a Nazi Germany that had to be defeated to begin with. What do I mean by that? Well, without getting into all the nuance of how World War II was started because of the lies on top of the lies on top of the lies that the Allies made about Germany, we can just start from 1919, the Treaty of Versailles, where there was an agreement that Germany would maintain no more than 100,000 soldiers, that they would be crippled militarily, that they could not expand. In fact, they lost roughly 13% of their territory, and they were not allowed to conscript anybody into the military ever again. Obviously, things didn't really go down like that, did it? Because shortly after that, Hitler took over. Now, it's not like Hitler came in with a bunch of flowers, some Hershey's Kisses, some goodwill, some barbecue chicken, sat down with everybody at a picnic table, said, hey guys, I think we should make some peace. I think we should work together. Let's collaborate and figure out a way that would benefit the entire world. And let's make Germany better and greater than what it once was. No, that's not what happened. See, Hitler killed a bunch of people. That's how he came into power. I mean, that's a short version of it, but yeah, Hitler was a murderer. And if I recall, it was called the Night of the Long Knives, where he really consolidated all the power and killed like 70 people to get to the position that he was in. Now, he started conscription again right around that same time. The Treaty of Versailles forbade it. Do you know what France did? They held some protests in the streets. Okay, not really sure what that's going to do, but that's what they did. Do you know what the United States did? Absolutely nothing, because they believed in maintaining an isolationist position when it came to Germany. Oh, but Great Britain, they take the cake. Because you know what Great Britain did? They actually held the belief that the Treaty of Versailles was too punitive, that they punished them too harshly. And instead of punishing Germany and Hitler, who I just told you all literally murdered people to get in the position that he was in, instead of punishing them, they made a deal with them. They made a deal called the Anglo-German Naval Agreement, where Hitler and Nazi Germany was allowed to build up a naval fleet of roughly 33% the capacity of Great Britain. I'm not exactly sure how you're going to keep a bunch of Nazis in check when you're arming them to the teeth. But it doesn't just stop there, ladies and gentlemen. Shortly after that, about a year or so, it was 1936. Hitler made a phone call, said, hey, man, I think we want to hold the Olympics here. Just make sure you don't bring those Jews and we're all good. In fact, a lot of people don't realize that's how Jesse Owens was allowed to run. It's because, unfortunately, the Jewish sprinters weren't allowed to. I'm not really sure why Hitler was more okay with black people running than Jewish people, but that, I guess, just demonstrates how much he despised Jewish people at the time. Now, all of the countries that participated in the Olympics that year were privy to this, obviously, because their Jewish runners weren't allowed to run. The Jewish competitors weren't allowed to compete. But not only that, simultaneously, alongside these Olympics, there was a protest Olympics taking place that included roughly 6,000 competitors. Now, for comparison, there were 11,000 competitors in the World Olympics this year. So in 36, in Barcelona, Spain, 6,000 competitors from around the world were competing in, or whether they were going to compete rather, in protests of the Olympics that were going to be held in Berlin. So it wasn't as if the United States, Great Britain, France, and the rest of their allies could pretend that Hitler was a saint, that people were not upset and pissed off, that they were uplifting this anti-Semite, that they were uplifting a murderer, that they were uplifting a dictator. They couldn't pretend, because there were protests around the world when they announced these Olympics. The chair of the Olympic Committee was put under a lot of pressure in the U.S. to not allow the U.S. to compete, even though he ultimately did allow them to compete. And there, parallel to the Olympics, there were scheduled an entirely different set of the Olympics. The only thing that stopped it from happening was the Spanish Revolution that happened 2 days before it was set to take off. Now, of course, we don't learn about that in the history books, do we? We can talk about the fact that companies like Ford, GM, and GNC ultimately had to sue the United States Because we later found out that the United States bombed their Nazi subsidiaries. In other words, Ford, GM, GNC, and the like were manufacturing military weaponry, vehicles, everything you can think of and everything that you would need to start a war. They were manufacturing for Nazis. In order to do so, obviously, the United States federal government would have had to approve such an act. In other words, Hitler wouldn't have been able to fight a war. There would have been no blitzkrieg without the help of the manufacturing industry of the United States and other countries as well. So why do we have a victory day? Why do we have a victory day? We have a victory day because despite every sign, every signal that you could possibly receive, hey, this guy's a psychopath. If we allow him to continue arming himself at this rate, if we allow him to continue building up his military at this rate, if we allow him to continue to push the propaganda that he's been able to push on the world, and we allow him to continue to do this unchecked while arming him to the teeth, this will inevitably lead to a war. One could argue, now this is just my opinion, one could argue there wouldn't be a necessity for a victory day if the Allied powers didn't help Hitler every chance they get, whether it be directly or indirectly. And despite the fact that the Allied powers did everything in their power to seemingly help Hitler start World War II, they turn, and then of course, Russia loses 27 million people trying to fight back Hitler. How do they repay Russia? After the Allied powers finally defeat Hitler, I won't say they defeated Nazism, but I will say they defeated Hitler because, I mean, if they defeated Nazism, a lot of your tax dollars in the UK and a lot of our tax dollars in the US probably wouldn't be going to neo-Nazis in Ukraine. So I can't say confidently that we defeated Nazism. And there's another reason I can't say confidently we defeated Nazism. Because they repaid Russia by creating NATO not even 4 years later. The sole goal of NATO was to destroy the USSR. After creating the circumstances that led to a World War II, that led to the rise of Hitler, that led to his armament, that led to him having one of the most powerful militaries in the world, they created NATO to attack and destroy the nation that helped defeat the man that caused all of these problems, that was responsible for the Holocaust, that created the Axis powers with working alongside Japan and Spain and Italy. Like, I'm still a little confused as to how we arrived at that point in about 3.5 years. Because it was April, 3.5 years later, that they decided, yeah, I think we're going to actually go after Russia now. So that's how they thank them. They thank them by constantly ignoring every agreement, every conversation, every treaty where they said they would not encroach on Russia's sovereignty by pushing NATO further south, or further towards Russia's border. They provoked them over and over and over and over again. Even more interesting, it wasn't like, I mean, given that Russia lost, or rather at the time, USSR lost 27 million people, you would assume that they would be put in some of the most powerful international positions in the world, in the institutions that were constructed to follow to prevent another war like that from happening. But no, you know who they put in charge instead? Literally a bunch of Nazis. Whether it be NATO, whether it be NASA, whether it be the United Nations, whether it be the EU Commission, you couldn't turn your head. You couldn't blink. You couldn't turn a television screen or turn a news station without seeing someone who was literally wearing a swastika like 2 days ago giving a speech on behalf of the Western world in a leadership position, a consequential leadership position. Did you see that from Russia? Was Russia rewarded for the sacrifices that they made? Because it isn't like they just made those sacrifices in one war. That wasn't the first time that they had been allied with the Allied powers. Or better yet, have we seen any accountability for how the West contributed to the very Nazis they are prancing around Western Europe and even some parts of the United States claiming that they defeated? No accountability whatsoever. No accountability and apparently no self-awareness. See, there are a lot of things in the history books that either don't get mentioned enough or get completely ignored or omitted. And a lot of what I talked about today is some of it. How many of you knew that there was an Olympics that was set to run parallel to the Berlin Olympics? How many of you knew that Great Britain, the same Great Britain that was nearly decimated, rather the same England that was nearly decimated by Germany, they were the reason that Germany was able to have a naval fleet, ladies and gentlemen. They said they weren't hard enough on Germany. Or excuse me, they were too hard. They were too hard. That the rest of the world was too hard on Germany, that Great Britain itself was too hard on Germany, and they helped to rearm them. They literally gave them the weapons that were used to bomb them into oblivion. Who was held accountable for that? These NATO powers, ladies and gentlemen, would have you believe that Russia is the enemy for defending its sovereignty, when Russia's propensity to protect its sovereignty, not like soldiers, not even necessarily soldiers trained, and this is what they do every day. I mean, every Russian's propensity to protect their sovereignty is the only reason, perhaps, that we're not all speaking German today. And it wasn't Russia that was protecting Hitler at every turn. It wasn't Russia who allowed the Treaty of Versailles to be violated at every turn. And when Russia finally had to step in to make a deal to try and protect themselves from the consequences of the West allowing Hitler to gain that level of power, and was ultimately betrayed, of course, which I'm pretty sure they anticipated happening. But when they had to defend themselves, there wasn't just blood spilled from soldiers. It was blood spilled by everybody. I mean, Putin's own family died on the front lines. He has family members who died on the front line, and that's what he will be celebrating tomorrow. There are people who have grandparents who died on the front line, or died and they weren't even part of the fight. That's what they'll be celebrating tomorrow. And these Western European nations, these NATO countries, if you will, have the audacity to remove Russia from sports competitions, to remove Russian flags out of the celebration of the victory against the Nazis, to try and erase Russia from history. The level of audacity, the level of ego, the level of hubris that's on full display by Europe, the United States, and the rest of the NATO West is exactly why they are taking L after L after L from around the world. Whether it be losing Burkina Faso, losing Mali, losing Niger, losing this war in Ukraine at the hands of Russia, not really being sure on what side of the fence Saudi Arabia is on because they don't really trust NATO powers anymore. The only victory that they might be able to claim over the last several years is Syria, and we're not really sure how long that's going to last. Because let's be clear, the new Syrian leadership seems pretty incompetent. So the level of hubris that we've seen from NATO over the last 50 or 60 years is actually catching up with them. And the fact that you believe that you can have a day of celebration of victory over Nazis without including Russia is very reminiscent of the last couple of years where you thought that you could have a world economy that didn't include Russia. And how did that work out for you guys? Because last I checked, y'all are still scrambling to figure out who to blame. I mean, Liberation Day for Trump didn't really turn out to be all that liberating, did it? And terrorists didn't turn out to work out the way he thought it was going to. There's a bunch of infighting between the European countries and America. They don't know who to trust. They don't even know who's competent enough to lead them forward. Meanwhile, Russia has had the strongest economy that it's had in a very long time. In fact, one of Russia's top officials came out and said, whenever he was asked, well, how would it feel to be part of the world economy again? You know what he said? Yeah, we don't need you. We're good. We're actually better off. We're fine. Thank you. The world thought that they could omit Russia from history. And every single day since they started this process, they're finding out there is no history without Russia. And you can pay off your proxies, like in Ukraine. You can pay off, you can try to assassinate them. You can try to erase them from the history books. But fortunately, we live in an age of information now, ladies and gentlemen. We live in an age where I could tell you about how Nazis were propped up by the West and these NATO powers, and you could just go confirm it. I can tell you how often and how much leeway Putin gave Ukraine and NATO before it had to take action to protect its borders. But you could go and confirm it. We all know that Hitler was Time Man of the Year, but not just once. He was mentioned in time before that. He was being celebrated. You could go confirm that. No matter how much y'all try to erase history, erase Russia from history, it won't work. You cannot erase the fact that it is Russia right now who is allying itself with Burkina Faso at a time when it is needed most as a superpower to make sure that they can combat the terrorists that the West put there and the economic sanctions that they're trying to instill on Burkina Faso. We remember how Russia put bodies on the line to try and protect the sovereignty of Syria while still trying to protect their sovereignty at home. We remember how Russia had to literally fight for its sovereignty against a country that used to be a part of Ukraine was part of Russia. Now, if you say that now, apparently that means you're a Putin puppet, but no, that's the truth, guys. We also remember how the Azov battalion, a neo-Nazi battalion, was rewarded for helping to overthrow the government of Ukraine and became official as a part of the military of Ukraine. And yet the United States government continued to fund it, continued to push this war. They laughed and insulted Putin when he said that this is a war against Nazism. And now you understand why Victory Day is so important to them. And it is not just important for Russia. It is a day where we all need to stop, take a step back, and remember why we're not all speaking German right now. Not that there's anything wrong with German. You know, that's not a particularly easy language to learn, but it's important for us to remember their Victory Day, because their Victory Day is foundationalized in a truth of how we came here, how we got here. And by acknowledging their Victory Day and studying their Victory Day, we also learn about our individual countries' acknowledgement, whether you be from the UK, whether you might be from the United States or any of the NATO powers. You learn about your country's hand in the creation of the very monster they're trying to take credit for slaying. So as there are many people that will be gathering tomorrow in Russia, in Moscow, make sure that you take time to try to go on social media and find some translations if you need to. Look at the parade. Look at the celebrations. Look at the passion. Study. Understand what it means to them. Understand our part. If you're an American, it's important for you to understand your part, our part as a country. Our ignorance allowed Nazism to flourish. If you're British, our ignorance allowed Nazism to flourish. French, our ignorance, all of us. They had a whole Olympics and everybody's like, yeah, I'm just going to watch the Olympics. I'm learning, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if y'all know this. I'm black. And I'm learning about the black history of Jesse Owens, the sprinter. And guess what? I had no idea that at the time, I had no idea that my black history was being used to paint over the image of a monster that was Hitler. In the US, the country that I was born in, was a part of that. That in and of itself is offensive. So that's what Victory Day, if you live outside of Russia, that's what Victory Day should be for you. It should be a moment to take a step back, look back, and reflect. How did we get here exactly? And why do we keep allowing the United States to claim that they're the reason we won World War II after it was Russia, or rather the USSR, that sacrificed 27 million people, that put Hitler and Nazi Germany on their back heels? And if the US and the West and NATO, if they hate Nazis so much, why is it that my tax dollars keep ending up in their pockets? Why is it that our manufacturing companies, weapons manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers even, why is it that their weapons, their vehicles, their products keep ending up in the hands of Nazis? Why is it that for some reason in Ukraine, they're sending people to train terrorists to attack people in Burkina Faso, while on the other side of that coin, Russia is sending military troops to help combat terrorism? It should be a day of reflection on our place in the empire and how we can contribute to enlightening people. Because in an age of information, as the most powerful weapon you can wield other than a gun, and sometimes even more powerful. Because if they can't control your information, if they can't manipulate you with lies, they can't get you to push for their wars, to push for their atomic bombs, to push for their CIA narratives, to push for their regime change wars. That's how we win. We win with the truth. And the truth is, I don't care which country you're from, there is no Victory Day without Russia and the sacrifice of those people. If you're in the US, call in 1-844-944-3344. UK 08081965522. Worldwide 0044-203-966-2625. I'm Niko House, standing in for George Galloway, and you're watching the mother of all talk shows.
George, I'm just looking at another dimension in this Gaza war conflict. Could this be a religious conflict in the guise of it's not Islam versus Christianity versus Judaism, but an ideology, a Zionist ideology in establishing their leader that is supposed to come in the future, and they will then govern and rule?
It's in their ideology, for sure. The Zionists are no more and no less than a nationalist ideology. They have nothing whatsoever to do with religion. Anybody who thinks Netanyahu is religious hasn't looked too closely into his private life. These people are extreme nationalists, exceptionalists. Some Americans believe in American exceptionalism. Zionists believe in Jewish exceptionalism. Nobody, in truth, is exceptional. There's nothing religious about it. It's about land. It's about nationalist supremacy, ethno-religious supremacy on the land of Palestine. And the Europeans colonized Palestine in the same way that the Europeans colonized South Africa. So fitting, the victims of white European colonialism are coming to the aid of other victims of white European colonialism. And they're doing the whole world a signal service.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. I am standing in for George Galloway, and my name is Niko House. Let's check out this poll. Should Russia be at the VE Day celebrations? We have a total amount of votes of 16,324, with 94% saying yeah. I'm glad, because I would have lost a little bit of hope for humanity otherwise. And we got 6% saying no. Now, for Telegram, 94 yes, 6 no. X, 55% yes, 45% no. Really? X, I'm judging y'all. I'm gonna talk to y'all after this show. We're gonna have a conversation. YouTube comments, 90% yes, 10 no. And YouTube stream, 93% yes, and 7 no. I'm rocking with y'all, YouTube. But X, we gotta have a conversation after this. 1-844-944-3344 if you're in the US. UK 08081965522. Worldwide 0044-203-966-2625. Call in. Right now, I want to bring in a very special guest. It is a person I consider my friend, a person that I've worked with for a long time, a little bit over a decade now. A political analyst, a journalist, an activist, an organizer, a presenter. I mean, literally every anything under the sun, and a co-host of The Truth Wire. Welcome to the show, Fiorella Isabel.
Hi, Niko. Amazing to see you here. You're doing an awesome job, by the way.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Fee. And, well, rather, fam. I feel like it would be inappropriate for me to call you Fee and not fam during our first interview on MOATS together. But I appreciate you coming on. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. All things are getting a little bit hectic here in Moscow for the 80th celebration of the Victory Day. The sacrifices, as you mentioned in your opening statement, 27 million people from the Soviet Union. This is so much deeper for a lot of the people here than I think most in the West can truly understand.
Now, you actually posted the other day that you were at a concert. I'm assuming this is like one of the celebrations leading up to the Victory Day celebration. Can you describe that concert and what it was like for you to be there, be in Moscow during this?
Yeah, so this concert will actually, people will be able to see it in Russia, I believe on Channel 1 on Friday, May 9th. And that is basically a celebration of, and also in a way, a very nostalgic understanding and participation of all Russians, as many as could go, to really see the significance of World War II, the significance of what is called here the Patriotic War, because for Russia, it was specifically the moment they entered and the moment these battles were lost under, of course, the Soviet Union, which included, of course, so many countries like Ukraine at the time as well. And there was the participation of so many young people who were the organizers who were helping lead this event, which to me just signals the historical education of the population of Russia, the way people are passing down these stories and the way it still means something, even if people aren't political, because you have to understand Russia has a very diverse population, and not everybody is up to date as to what's happening. But so many people, it was completely full, went there, and it was hard to describe being there with Russians who have lost relatives. They carried their faces on poster boards, kind of like the Immortal Regiment parades you've all been seeing all over Europe, all over the world, even in Australia. People walking around with the portraits of the relatives who were killed or died recently, or at some point veterans of this patriotic war. And they made a performance with many songs that all Russians knew. And, and I was trying to understand as much as possible, because obviously it's not an easy language, but it was the feeling, the emotional pull of all of that was very significant. What reminded me of when I was in Lebanon at Hassan Nasrallah's funeral, that sort of sentiment of something bigger than yourself, and understanding that historical connection. It was just something that was incredible to witness and really touched me, especially, of course, in comparison to what Donald Trump recently said. I don't really pay attention to rhetoric too much when it comes to anybody, especially Trump, because he says whatever's on his mind. But in this case, just seeing the vast difference of what we are told, Niko, in the United States growing up, that we are the heroes, that without us, World War II wouldn't have been won, and that we did the most, and we're Captain America, we saved the day. That brainwashing that is instilled in us, it's just so incredibly jarring to see the truth, even though we've heard it, we know it. To witness it is on another level.
I was going to add, first of all, I'm glad you mentioned Ukraine, because we're going to talk about that in a second, how the fact that they were literally part of Russia, and instead of celebrating, they're impeding the celebrations at this point. But I was going to ask, how does it feel being there, witnessing all that as an American? I know that you're Latina, but like, you're an American, you were subject to the same programming and propaganda that I was subject to growing up. And so how did it feel, like, knowing, like, wow, we were just lied to? And it's kind of scary how many Americans have no idea the truth of what took place at the end of World War II and what led to the end of that war.
I think in a way, you feel a little bit of guilt, or a significant amount of guilt, for, I don't know, not doing enough to get the truth out there. And I think, we in the United States, we promote propaganda so much, whereas Russia, they don't really have, they don't do it in the same way. And so it's just really enraging in many ways to sit there and be humbled in a way where I feel like we should know better. We should somehow get this information out. There's so many people, when I posted that comment, Niko, that were so just butthurt about the whole situation. They were saying, no, that's not true. The communists, they were terrible, blah, blah, blah. And it's the same repetitive slogans. And as an American, the one thing that impacted me the most was really understanding that we could never imagine what these people endured. The same way I've been to West Asia and seen the destruction is the same way I've been to Donbass and seen the destruction. We can't imagine what it would be like to lose 27 million Americans. We can't even, it's incomprehensible on our own in our brain. On your own 100%, soil.
100% agree. That's the thing that gets me. Yeah, it's like if somebody shows up at your doorstep and you got to be ready to shoot. Like, that's crazy.
To see your city destroyed because they gave a lot of facts while they were doing this, how Moscow was under attack. And I can't imagine how that would even happen now, like today. And that is something that is unacceptable to Russians. It is unacceptable that they would allow this to happen. This is why what's happening now is so relevant. You talk about the Battle of Kursk. Well, the Battle of Kursk was won twice now by Russia, in 1943 and in 2025. And so to me, that just tells you the parallels of history, the rhyming of history, right? We're in different situations and different theaters with different faces, but a lot of the themes are just the same.
Yeah, history echoes, and I like how you said that it's incomprehensible. Like that explains why Putin made the decision, or at least could help people understand why Putin made the decision to go into Ukraine. Because like you said, the idea of experiencing 27 million people because you reacted too late is incomprehensible, and they refuse to allow it to happen again. So if you want the smoke, then that's what we're going to have to do. It's not that he choked, because he tried every avenue, even treaty talk. And they didn't want to, NATO and Ukraine didn't want to adhere to those stipulations about not advancing. And that's what happened. So speaking of Ukraine, I'm sure that you heard that there were reports that Putin actually initiated a 3-day ceasefire, to probably in remembrance of V-Day, especially because once again, Ukraine was actually a part of V-Day, and they actually celebrated at one point until this war started, Victory Day, alongside Russia. However, instead of Zelensky giving his soldiers a break, it seems that he's taking the opposite route. He actually criticized Putin for introducing this temporary ceasefire. And it looks like that he even did try to attack Russia. What do you make of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's just touch on that first. You know, it's moments before this momentary ceasefire takes place. And Ukraine has been attacking civilian infrastructure, attacked Crimea, which is a done deal. Crimea will never go back to Ukraine. It was decided 10 years ago. This is completely irrelevant at this point. And so now they decided to put out the largest drone attack in the history essentially of this entire war, with 524 Ukrainian drones. And then they had missiles, they had also the HIMARS rockets, all of that within 24 hours. Of course, all of it was intercepted by Russia, but this was in Moscow. This was like in this vicinity of this area. It wasn't just, far away or in the Donbass. So it's kind of shows a few things. To me, it's a signal of desperation, right? Ukraine knows this is a done deal. I for one, believe that the United States and Russia do want to find a solution, because for various reasons. But one of those reasons being that there is a desire for the U.S. to move to a different theater, right? But for Russia, they just want to be done with it. They want to open up economic trades with everybody. They want to stop the war. Because no matter what, even if you are the victor, war is still a loss. You're still losing people. You're still losing money. Your attention is somewhere else. And so at the end of the day, there is a desire for Russia to do this. But Zelensky seems to be playing the role of just the petulant child that will not give up. But I think if we know very well what Ukraine is and what the U.S. is, the puppeteer, right? The master behind all of this, the architect of this war, we know very well that if the United States ends support fully, this is all going to go down the drain. And right now, the latest conversations, the back channels that we're seeing, is that there is an attempt to really, really stop this. And at every turn, Ukraine just makes it so much more difficult, as does Europe. And I think what we're seeing here is just a call for desperation.
Do you feel like that Zelensky made this attack on Russia behind Trump's back, even potentially behind Europe's back? Now within context, once again, there was Ukrainian soldiers marching alongside British soldiers during their VE celebration. So I'm not sure, what to make of that. But like you said, Trump doesn't like losing. And Biden came out and admitted in an interview, Ukraine had no chance of winning this war, which is basically just reaffirms the reasons that Trump wants to pull out. So do you feel like potentially that this attack was done behind Trump's back and there might be repercussions because of it?
I think there's a lot of things at play here, because we know that the United States is really the architect of this war. However, now, as you said, Trump wants to win. He doesn't like to lose. And Trump ran on this, right? Remember, he said he was going to end the war in 24 hours. And then he gave a Time interview where he said, no, that we were just joking. And that wasn't the case. But yes, we want to end the war. He needs a win. He needs to get out of this. This needs to be looked on not as a failure, which is what it is for the United States, for NATO, et cetera. But it needs to be kind of manipulated into a PR win. Oh, we're going to give Ukraine money for we're going to make a minerals deal for Ukraine. We're helping Ukraine when really we're just basically taking all of Ukraine. Oh, we're going to make peace with Russia when really you lost and you need to, cut your losses. And so I think Donald Trump really needs to get this to end. But in terms of Zelensky, there's only so much that he can do to show that he's fighting for Ukraine, right? So I think there is some theatrics going on here, kind of like their spat before, because Zelensky has to show that he's not giving up on Ukraine. He's already disliked severely. In my opinion, they will get rid of Zelensky. Yeah. He's not going to be the leader much longer of whatever's left of Ukraine. So yeah, I definitely think there's some push and pull there and some theatrics behind the scenes, but Ukraine's destiny is no longer up to Ukraine, unfortunately, and they could have gotten out of this sooner, much better. And now there's no going back.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Their destiny's been out of their hands for a while. Really, you can make an argument that their destiny's been out of their hands since Joe Biden took office, which is a whole different conversation. But I find it interesting that he decides to conduct this attack on VE Day, the day before VE Day. He tries to attack Moscow specifically. That level of provocation is absolutely insane, because Putin has already made it clear that he doesn't even consider Zelensky to be a legitimate leader. So if he even entertains a peace deal where Zelensky is the other party, that would be judicious of him. That would be magnanimous of him. But now it's like you attacked Russia on one of the most important days, or at least one of the most important weeks of the year. What exactly did you think? What do you think is going to be the outcome? What? I don't see a world now where Zelensky can remain in power in any capacity whatsoever and this war ends.
Yeah, I think part of the deal will be to eventually replace Zelensky, and Russia needs to ensure its security guarantees as much as possible. But what Russia should know, and I think what some in Russia do know, is that the United States can't be trusted. They're building up opposition still in Romania, opposition in Moldova, and the Balkan area, in Germany, Poland. For the next administration, as you know, Niko, the administrations take turns, right? So that is true, that there should be a watchful eye, even if we do get an end, quote unquote, end to this war. It's not something that I think the U.S. is going to give up on, especially with this minerals deal, because they'll be right next to Russia with access to a lot of resources, which we know our empire is about resource extraction. Now, on the other hand, when Russia is being attacked directly in Moscow, Russia has been attacked numerous times, has been targeted via terrorist attacks. They are not an emotional, Putin is not an emotional president. He doesn't react like many in the US. He is a very logical president. It is a very pragmatic country. So I don't think they're just going to retaliate in the way that many people would want them to, just go ahead and get rid of Ukraine. Look what they've done, blah, blah, blah. This is not how Russia functions. So they're going to be as diplomatic as possible with the patience that many don't have. It's just so bad.
Good stuff. We got about a minute left. Let everybody know where they can find you, Fee.
So y'all can find me on X at Fiorella Isabel M on X, and you can find me on Substack, where I just wrote the latest piece precisely covering the Ukraine, Russia, US potential ceasefire deal, potentially covering also the May 9th celebrations and a lot of the geopolitics around that. And you can also find me, of course, on Truthwire on YouTube, where I go live every week.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. 1-844-944-3344 if you're in the US. 08081965522 if you're in the UK. 0044-203-966-2625 if neither of those numbers are working in your worldwide. Call in. My name is Niko House, standing in for George Galloway, and this is the mother of all talk shows.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the MOATS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you all, and welcome back to the Mother of All Talk Shows. I know I am not George Galloway, but I do got my pretty boy George coat on today, in my baby blue, my pastel blue. So I look enough like him to call it. We have a caller from Portland, Matt. What's going on, man? What do you got to say?
Oh, well, I was listening to your conversation you just had about what's going on in Ukraine. There's parallels between what we see in Ukraine and what happened in Germany after World War I. The CIA, the British intelligence, French, got together and put Hitler in power to do one thing: destroy Russia. They did the same thing here back when Obama was president. Palantir, the genius psychopaths that they are, they orchestrated all this stuff. They orchestrated a lot of things, like the downfall of Syria. They did this. They wanted, and Brian Berlechte points out, they're not trying to end the war in Ukraine because they have to keep Russia focused over here so that when they start the war with Iran, even though Russia said we won't come to your aid, they're going to, you're going to see, look, they have India and Pakistan fighting each other right now. They started that. And then they're looking at, okay, what else can we do? We got to keep Russia busy. We're focused on China. We've got this going over here. We got this. So this is all orchestrated by Palantir, and they don't want to end the war. And yes, Trump said, Trump is doing what they tell him to do, talk it up, bomb Yemen. It's all about Israel. Keep Russia busy. Russia supports Israel. They don't support, So this war will continue, but Europe will look like they're taking over so that they can go and say, okay, you guys run this over here while we go and focus on Iran and China. And that's what, you can look this stuff up on the State Department website. They're still using that USA Doge supposedly. No, it's been in the State Department. They're still trying to undermine China, and that's why they started this. They're trying to start this war between India and Pakistan so that it can stop the Belt and Road Initiative to hinder China. So, this war will continue. Trump just has to look like he wants it to end, but yet he has no way to end it, because if you get rid of Zelensky, you still have the Nazis running the government, so you have to get rid of the Nazis in order to be able to really stop the war, and Russia knows this. This is why they know they're going to keep marching forward. And so, they'll take Ukraine and make it a part of Russia again, which is, I think, even the Ukrainians that don't want to be a part of this probably want Russia to take it and make them feel safe rather than have these Nazis running the country. I think they even realize that they're not safe as long as the Banderites are there and Zelensky. So, if they ever do hold, he'll be out. But the Banderites will still be there until they get rid of them. That means Russia has to take Ukraine to make the people safe. So that...
Yeah, and Putin definitely made sure to use the word denazification purposely, because he understood exactly what you said. You cannot have peace in Ukraine and peace between Ukraine and Russia while neo-Nazis are still running the show. And unfortunately, that has become part of Ukrainian culture, at least West Ukrainian culture, in a lot of ways. And as far as planning, we know Palantir is extremely involved in whatever regime change effort we've seen around the world. And you also made a very another astute point about just how there were commissions put together, backdoor deals made, and a lot of things that led to the rise of Hitler. I said at the top of the show that there's a lot of nuance that goes in to trying to understand how we even got to World War II via World War I. I mean, if you go in and you do some deep research into the origins of Cecil Rhodes, most of you know him as the guy who created the Rhodes Scholarship, or at least that's what the scholarship was named after. Some of you know him as the creator of apartheid South Africa, the governor of apartheid South Africa. But he was kind of the architect of World War I. And the reason that they decided to pursue World War I was because of how strong Russia and Germany were getting. And so they split them up, made one of them an ally, made one of them an enemy, told lie after lie after lie that the CIA eventually admitted were all lies about Germany. And so that created the circumstances and put Germany in such a pitiful situation that Hitler used to galvanize them, right? And then ultimately, obviously, that led to World War II. But if the lies didn't lead to their defeat, which then led to the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler would have never had a galvanizing tool to use. So you are absolutely right about the nuance of how those people came together to create this Hitler figure. And if it wasn't Hitler, it was going to be somebody. They wanted that war and they needed that war. The first war, I believe, there were like a 1,000 new billionaires or millionaires that were made. And when that war commission, George Bush's grandfather was on it. When that war commission was put together, they knew exactly what they were doing when they started World War II. Appreciate you, Matt, from Portland. Good talk. We got some comments on YouTube. You can scan the QR code now and leave a comment on YouTube stream. Keep it clean, please. Keep it clean. I know if y'all watch my show, I don't necessarily keep it all that shiny and clean, but we're on MOATS right now, so we have to keep it a little bit clean. And we'll read it out on air. Randy Terpstra, the Soviet Union won World War II and defeated fascism. Nobody else. There you go. Scott M. Churchill helped the Nazis in Greece because Nazis are easier to control than Greek left-wing socialists who helped us during the war. That's interesting. I never knew that. I never knew that he helped the Nazis in Greece. David Marston. Operation Paperclip rescued 1,600 Nazi war criminals and employed them in the Pentagon, NATO, CIA, and NASA. That is so true. One of the favorite, so I'm a big Marvel fan, a big MCU fan, and one of my favorite parallels that they always bring up is how Hydra, which would probably be considered, the Nazis, if you will, they're the Nazi science department, how they infiltrated, quote unquote, SHIELD, which would be the CIA, and took over. And effectively, even SHIELD agents who thought that they were doing right were actually just carrying out the deeds of this Nazi organization, and they had no idea. And that's effectively what Operation Paperclip was. Like, why would you even think that it's a good idea to bring Nazis in? Like, I don't even understand. Whoever came up with that plan, or maybe that was always a plan. I like to ask myself, maybe this is a question that y'all can ponder as well. Did we bring the Nazis over? Did we convert them to work for us, or were they always working for us and we just brought them back home? It's something to ponder. Kuplex. Usually when you read the Soviet Union killed my grandfather on X, it turns out he was in the SS. That's true. Yin Yang Eclipse. This is probably the best I've heard Niko speak and hold his own as a commentator. Very informative, true, and well-spoken. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I would like to think that I've had a few good pieces out there, but hey, look, I'm gonna take the W. Appreciate that, Yin Yang Eclipse. Good looking out. We got Dave from California on line 2 talking about Victory Day. What you got to say?
Niko, I can't believe I'm talking to you. Brother. I can't believe it. Okay, this is what I got to say. Now, remember the stamps and all the stuff for Uncle Joe?
Say that last part again. You were breaking up.
Oh, okay. Uncle Joe was Joseph Stalin. Mm-hmm. And we sent Uncle Joe, a whole lot of Uncle Joe's armaments that he used to fight the Nazis were manufactured in the United States. You know that, right?
Yeah, of course. We had an agreement with them. We even did the Malta conference before Truman came in and killed it. Yep. Yeah.
Now, and here's another thing I want to say. There is a coin. I've been trying to run this coin down that's got the Nazi symbol on one side and the Star of David on the other. I saw it, and I've been trying to run that coin down. Can't find it anywhere.
Now listen, I've seen it online, and I know some people might think that sounds far-fetched or fake news, but it's a possibility it exists, because for those of you who don't know, the Zionist Jewish party in Germany, in Nazi Germany, they worked alongside the Nazi government to try and get themselves removed and moved over to Israel, or at the time it was Palestine. That is a fact. I found this out this year. Okay. And so for context, there were a bunch of Jewish parties, a bunch of Jewish organizations in Germany. They were all ended, and the Zionist Jewish party was allowed to remain and organize alongside Hitler for their own benefit. So if that coin does exist, it actually wouldn't be that surprising to me. It would probably be a symbol of some type of accord that was made between the two. Because unfortunately, as we've seen lately, Zionism and Nazism don't seem that far apart from each other. They don't seem at odds with each other as much as we would have liked to believe at one point in the past. I mean, Israel is the same country that sterilized a bunch of Ethiopian women, claiming that it was just a vaccine, and the entire world knew about it, and no one did anything. And the only way that you could do something like that, and feel like you have, like, your conscience cleared, is if you have that type of mindset of a supreme version of your race like the Nazis had. So I could see how Hitler would have no problem making deals with Zionists and vice versa. So, but appreciate that, Dave. Thank you very much. And I'm glad you got a chance to call in. I want to read off some of our MOATS donors. A big thank you to this week's top donors. You can visit MOATSTV.com to be a donor. Andrew Cutler, shout out to you. Patrick Spackman, Vicky Sherwood, Richard Glenberg, and a very, very, very special thanks to Cheryl Woods. Cheryl Woods is our biggest donor so far this week. We appreciate you. Please do become a donor for the mother of all talk shows tonight and give what you can to support the show. Our new and improved donation feature is on the website, MOATSTV.com. It's swift and it is easy to use. All right. Make sure y'all go support the show. Continue to help George grow. As you all know, MOATS has become one of the most popular shows, not just in the UK, but around the world. I like to call him Worldwide George. So we got a poll update, everybody. All right. So total votes, 7,472. On Telegram, should Russia be at the VA Day celebrations? 94% still say yes. 6% say no. On X, 53% say yes. 47% say no. Y'all have literally managed to get worse since the last time I read the poll out, X. I need y'all to get it together. Or I'm going to need some justification when I go and look at this poll, X. I'm going to go look. And we're going to be some consequences and repercussions, because that's ridiculous. YouTube comments, 90% say yes, 10% say no. Okay. I mean, that's positive, but I feel like it should be a little closer to that 94, 95%. YouTube stream, 94% say yes, 6% say no. 1-844-944-3344 if you're in the US, 08081965522 if you're in the UK, 0044-203-966-2625 if you're worldwide. Give us a call. In a second, we will be having one of my favorite guests on, one of my favorite talk show hosts, a hotspot brother. If you follow us on Hotspot on X, you follow some of his videos there, you'll know why I love this man's analysis so much. But right now, we are going to take a break. My name is Niko House, standing in for George Galloway, and you are watching the mother of all talk shows.
the airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As Fisher says, the Twitter sphere where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts, it is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the mother of all talk shows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Welcome back to the mother of all talk shows, everybody. I am your special guest host, Niko House, and I am standing in for George Galloway. We do have some breaking news. There's been black smoke, so there is no Pope. We will still be waiting to figure out who the Pope will be here coming up pretty soon. And I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are relieved. I'm not sure I would want to be the Pope right now, guys. This is being the Pope in the social media era seems like a lot to deal with. And so I'm sure that a lot of people probably breathing a sigh of relief, but we have to wait yet another couple of days to figure out who the Pope will be. But in the meantime, I got somebody who might be a little bit better than the Pope. My friend, one of the founders of Revolutionary Blackout Network, an organizer for mutual aid, an activist, a journalist, one of my brothers and fellow content creators on Hotspot on X, Nick Cruse, is here to join the show. Welcome to MOATS, Nick.
What's poppin'? My brother Niko, man. It's great to see you sitting in the chair there, breaking it down. Your monologue was amazing. It's great to join you today, man. What's poppin', Niko?
No, I appreciate it, man. Look, I'm just trying to keep up with you, dog, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out. I know that you had some hotspot content to put out today, and you making the time to come out and talk about some of the stuff that's happening today in the last couple of days means a lot. And speaking of which, Yemen and Donald Trump and even Netanyahu don't really seem to be on the same page. What's going on? Trump said that the fighting stopped. Yemen said, you've lost your mind. We have said no such thing. And over here, somewhere in the corner, Netanyahu is talking about completely erasing Gaza. So what's happening there?
We are seeing Donald Trump in the United States once again take another L by Yemen. The stated objective that Donald Trump laid out was to demilitarize Yemen and stop the attacks and retain control of the Red Sea. That is not what they have accomplished. And actually what happened is that the United States have lost hundreds of millions of dollars because Yemen have shot down multiple fighter pilots, drones as well. It has been a complete tactical defeat by the United States because Yemen say they will continue their attacks on Israel and they will continue to stand with the Palestinian people while Trump once again is backing down. Now they are pivoting. And now they're saying that they are going to hold Iran accountable because they blame Iran for arming Ansar Allah in Yemen. So I'm telling all the people who support Donald Trump, all these fake MAGA alpha males, when are you guys going to enlist? Because Donald Trump is willing to sell out the American people and sacrifice American lives, fighting another Israeli Middle Eastern war. So Marian Adelson, her investment into the MAGA project, it was a great investment because not only Donald Trump is continuing to fight the war for Israel, provoke war with Iran, he is willing to crack down on free speech. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu has been very open about the fact that he praised Donald Trump and his administration for its crackdown on free speech. And that is happening because of the success of Yemen, because Israel's economy is in shambles. You have these massive boycotts internationally. You have young people who served in the IDF who are now traumatized, who've been outside the market. You have the Israeli settlers, the ones who can afford, the ones with the most money, they're fleeing the Israeli project. And then you had the Red Sea blockade. It is not going well for Israel. So when things are going bad, you have the West who have to rely on intense authoritarianism, which is what you're seeing with the Zionist project and the anti-Semitism hoax. It's because things are going bad for Israel. And that's because Yemen, they are doing their job as signatories to the Genocide Convention of holding Israel accountable for their genocide. And they brought Israel to their knees. The corporate media will never tell you this, but they caused a gigantic blow to the Israeli economy. And the Israeli economy, the Israeli project, is only sustainable because it's subsidized by the United States, which is another example of how Zionism as a self-determination project has failed, my brother Niko.
Yeah, ain't nothing self-determined about how much money coming out of our pockets to pay their bills. It's ridiculous. And I just find it weird, right? So Trump actually said that he had a huge announcement that he was going to make on Friday, right before he sat down with the Canadian Prime Minister and said that Yemen has capitulated and that they no longer are with the urge to fight anymore. I'm like, I don't really believe that, because Yemen always wants to smoke. They literally wake up in the morning and are like, who are we fighting with today? I'm ready. So I don't know who believed that lie, but I said, okay, I guess I'll hear him out. But what do you think compelled him to say that? And why did he think that it would? Because Yemen already came out and said, yeah, that's not true. So what compelled him to say that lie, knowing that it could be so easily debunked? Do you believe that he actually thought that there was a deal that was going to be achieved?
It's pure coke by Donald Trump, because remember, Pete Hegseth, he was on Fox News the week they declared this attack. I still remember there was all these slop MAGA X accounts who are boosted by Elon Musk and the Zionist entity, who was saying Yemen would pay, and they were celebrating the downfall of Yemen, saying that they made a giant mistake declaring war. And once again, they are forced to play politics and fix the narrative, because they once again failed in their military objective. I have said many times before, the United States and the idiots who run the foreign policy, they haven't won a war. They haven't accomplished a military objective in decades. They lost to the Taliban in Afghanistan. They failed to rid Korea of communism from the entire peninsula. They failed in the Middle East. They failed over and over again. They lost to Yemen, 3 times in 5 years? So it's all about narrative control. The only thing they actually do, and we're seeing Moody and India repeat the same strategy, is engage in mass civilian war crimes against civilians and killing of innocent people and using starvation as a tool of war. They commit atrocities as a way, because that's what they did in Yemen. They bombed hospitals. They kill civilians, because that's the only way they can wage war. They don't wage successful war. They engage in terrorism. And that is what we're seeing the United States engage. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say they engage in siege warfare, and it's actually pretty sad. It's sad. They should be ashamed of themselves, the fact that they cannot fight in a combat situation, soldier versus soldier, plane versus plane, ship versus ship. The only way that the United States and seemingly the majority of NATO powers can do any damage to a society is to kill the people who are not even trying to fight. Because right now, Yemen is a militia. I would consider them more so a militia. They're using borrowed weapons with little intel. They have the intel that they have, but it's not like you're getting intel from like the Israeli military, which has the most significant intel apparatus in the world. Like, they're working with what they have, and you can't even beat Yemen. So in my opinion, I believe what is actually happening is Trump, like you said, has to play narrative control now. He is pulling out because, and Dr. Wilmer Leon gave me this theory. He said that he believes that there was a missile shot near that naval ship that dropped that jet. and they were trying to maneuver, and that's why the jet fell, because there's a chance that it wasn't hooked in tight enough, and that's why the jet fell. And after that, the top brass was like, yeah, no, we're done. Because we don't even know what we're here for. We can't hit them. We're not winning. Yep. They keep attacking us, and we can't keep piling up these civilian numbers without the world eventually becoming suspicious. So I believe that Trump made that announcement, we're going to stop fighting them because they capitulated to us to justify the U.S. pulling out of a situation that they're actually losing, because he hasn't responded since the Houthis came out and said, yeah, that's not true. We're still going to be attacking everybody who comes through here. So I don't know where he got that from. Trump hasn't responded yet. So he might just try to ignore it and pretend like it's not happening, which could also be part of the reason why now BB has come out and is like, we're just going to have to erase Gaza. We're going to flatten it, because there was a realization that has been made at some point between the three. We can't actually stop Yemen, and the economic damage that they're causing is real.
Yeah. And that shows that many Americans, they start to oppose war when the United States seems to be losing. And that's why you see a lot of MAGA backlash against proposed war against Iran, because anyone with two brain cells know that would be a disaster for United States soldiers. The same way that Vietnam was a disaster for United States soldiers. A lot of people pretend that the American people was against Vietnam from the beginning. That was not the case. A lot of Americans actually was gung-ho. Let's destroy communism in other countries. And then they saw Americans come back in body bags. And that is what caused many Americans turn against war.
Like, that's why many... And they started getting drafted. They were like, hold on, this wasn't supposed to be my war.
Why do you think many Republicans haven't turned against the war in Gaza? Why do you think many Americans, many Democrats haven't turned against the war in Gaza? Because they see that as a war they are supporting against a weaker enemy. They're killing civilians, they're killing children. But if they actually had to fight against a true strong enemy, especially in the modern era, they're going to get their ass whooped the same way they got their ass whooped in every single modern war in my lifetime. Because the United States, they don't create soldiers. They don't create warriors, Niko. The people who signed up for the United States military, they're trying to get free college. They don't want to be a victim of the student loan debt crisis. Meanwhile, if you're in Yemen, you're standing up against the empire. If you're someone who's fighting for Hamas, you're fighting against the Zionist entity for the survival of your people. The same way with the Viet Cong, they was fighting for their sovereignty, their self-determination, their pride as a people. What's the American soldier fighting for? They're fighting for free college, free healthcare. Some of them are rich kids who are bored. So they're not warriors, Niko.
Yeah,
they're not fighting for the same way they're fighting.
If you ever got a healthcare, if you got an emergency room bill, that might galvanize you to go fight a war. Because boy, look, I'm trying to tell you, you could go broke having a kid. I have a friend who actually still paying off the debt from his second child's birth 7 years ago from having a kid. So I guess that could galvanize somebody into going to war. Really quick, I want to ask you, what do you make of this whole situation with India and Pakistan and the fact that it seems like no one is trying to mediate the outcome, considering that both of those countries have at least 170 nuclear weapons, and we can end up in a whole nuclear winter if it does pop off between them?
Yeah. We're seeing the results of the normalization of the war crimes that the Zionist entity have carried out against the Palestinians. That's what Moody, and that's what these fascists in India, that's what they want to see carried out against the Pakistan people. And I am calling for, and I have been calling for, this international anti-imperialist coalition. That's why I'm very happy to be aligned with Black Alliance for Peace, working with my brother Fred Hampton Jr. as well. That's what we build an international alliance, because we have these oligarchs and members of the ruling class where they maintain their power. And if you study history, this is the same. When they had their coalition wars in Europe, they was obsessed with sending peasants and working class people to die for their power. It's a obsession of the ruling class. And Moody is a part of this alliance and agenda. And India is very concerning because they significantly weaken BRICS in their mission. And I don't think BRICS will be successful as long as you have a fascist entity like Moody. And I am enthusiastic at heart, and I want BRICS to be successful at having an alternative system. But as long as you have India as part of this group that's always held them back, always been the black sheep in BRICS that's willing to commit these heinous crimes like they're doing against our Pakistani brothers and sisters, we will always be victims of this struggle, because the global working class suffers whenever these conflicts happen. The ordinary people are the people who suffer. So that's why it's horrible to see what's going on in India and Pakistan. And it's another example why India is just the black sheep in the BRICS alliance, 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up BRICS, because when you talking about this is supposedly a response to a gunman shooting tourists in Kashmir. They blame Pakistan. Pakistan denied any involvement. They're like, we don't have anything to do with this. And the disproportionate response seems like it was coordinated and almost ordered. And then bringing up BRICS, you have to keep this in the context of what we saw this past year, where Venezuela was prepped to join BRICS and everyone thought it was a done deal. But for some reason, Brazil blocks them from joining. So now that's two countries that have veto power in BRICS that have gone rogue, alleged, and the United States is kind of quiet about it as it's going on. So it does. There was mention by some people that whatever happened in Kashmir could have been a false flag, and it just so happened to line up perfectly with Modi's goals and with India's goals, or whoever's pulling the strings on both, where now they get to launch a full-scale operation. They're calling it an operation. Why are you launching an operation in response to a lone gunman, whenever the country that you're allegedly trying to blame has said that we had nothing to do with it, and you've not even provided any proof that they've had anything to do with it? So it is possible that this could be one of the modes that they're using to take down BRICS, considering how this multipolar world is coming into shape lately.
Yeah, and you guys see how, and I've been saying this for years, what Israel has done in Gaza is going to have a toxic effect on humanity for decades and generations to come, because what India is doing is engaging in collective punishment, and they are mass killing civilians. They was withholding water. They was withholding a large amount of the Pakistan water supply, and we know that Pakistan struggles with water. So what's that? That's them using starvation, hydration as a tool of war. Who normalized using starvation and withholding water and that kind of stuff in war? Israel. So you guys notice that Modi, a friend of Netanyahu, is using the same tactics that Israel is using. The true axis of evil, the people who are friendly with the Zionist regime, the people who are willing to engage in these acts of collective punishments, they're the true axis of evil, and that's what Israel normalized.
Absolutely true. Tell everybody where they can find you at, man.
Make sure you guys check me out on Revolutionary Blackout. Also to drop hotspot videos with my brother Niko as well. We'll be live tomorrow, our Revolutionary Blackout Roundtable. Me, Sabi Sab, JB Fine, and my brother Rome. We have a mutual aid event that we are planning with my friend Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. And it may be depressing discussing all these news. We may laugh, we may even cry, but it's very important not to be infected with nihilism and allow these Zionist cocksuckers to win. So please get organized, come together, engage in mutual aid, community building, and let's build an anti-war coalition, an international anti-war coalition to defeat the thugs like Modi and the Zionist regime that has completely poisoned humanity. So thank you, Niko. You're killing it. It's great to see you here. Most, man. You do great work, and you know that we're big friends. You're an honorary RBN member as far as I'm concerned. Much love to you, brother.
You already know, bro. You already know, bro. Appreciate you, and well said, man. That was Nick Cruse, everybody from Revolutionary Blackout Network. Make sure y'all go follow him on Twitter and YouTube. My name's Niko House. This is the mother of all talk shows, and I'm sitting in for George Galloway. We're going to break.
On the line is a Rose in Texas. I was at the beginning of a song on Californication, which is a song. Rose, welcome to the show.
Fan of the show, transgender fan of the show, and I wanted to briefly address your monologue from last week on Californication, because I almost entirely agree with what you said. Trans women athletes taking medals and records, directing children at nightclubs, and even going to elementary schools themselves, not to mention hormone blockers for children as well. The attack on freedom of speech. not only against conservatives, but anyone who doesn't fall in line with the agenda, rainbow flags on NATO military aircraft, which is certainly doing more to cultivate anti-queer sentiment around the world than there already is. All of that makes me sick. So because I don't believe in incest, bestiality, necrophilia, and pedophilia, I'm basically culturally right-wing by today's standards, even though less than 5 years ago, I'd still be left-wing. So in regards to you and everyone else watching who thinks of me and people like me as the villains right now, you should know that I support the most traditional Muslim, Jewish, Abrahamic believers to be as homophobic and transphobic as they want, because guess what? That's freedom of religion, which is a value we claim to have in the West. Now, my religion, I suppose, is I believe I'm a woman, but guess what? Not everyone has to convert to my religion. Otherwise, we basically have a theocracy, only this theocracy is for the ever-evolving LGBTQIA supercalifragilisticexpialidocious club. So that's all I wanted to get out of my system. Thank you.
Well, Rose, if I could put your call in a glass bottle and ship it around the world, I promise you that I would do so. Crystal clear, beautifully expressed, and I wish you every happiness in life. It is exactly what people who are transgender should be saying. And if they were, they would disappoint the liberal zealots who want to use them as a battering ram against the traditional family values of the rest of us. Beautifully expressed, Rose. I'll never forget it.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
What's going on, everybody? I am Niko House, standing in for George Galloway, and you are listening to the mother of all talk shows. We have Fra from Belfast, who wants to talk a little bit about India and Pakistan. You are on the line.
Hi, Niko. Thank you very much, brother, for taking the call. Just want to preface my remarks with just two quick comments. Just on you were talking about Hitler and, the Second World War. I think, like many people do, that Hitler was rearmed, encouraged by the West so that they would be able to defeat the Soviet Union and communism in 1941, which they failed to do. I think we're in the 1930s all over again. You can watch the rise of fascism across Europe and the rearming of Western Europe for a future attack upon Russia. And just on the Ukraine, briefly, I've been in the Donbass 3 times. The people in Donbass told me they didn't leave Ukraine. Ukraine left them because of the CIA-inspired coup in 2014. But I do want to talk about India and Pakistan just briefly. If you look at, and I know your colleague there touched on this, when you look at Modi, if somebody gave me one of his speeches and didn't tell me who it was and who had spoken those words, I would automatically assume it was Netanyahu, because Zionism, fascist Zionism, this Jewish national ideology, is exactly the same and mirrored with Modi. He uses Hindu nationalism, which is verging on being fascist, in order to build and secure and solidify his voting base in order to keep him in power. Now, the history of India, I'm not a historian, but when the British were forced to leave in 1947, I believe, 1948, they divided India into India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Kashmir. Now, it would be my thinking that the people of Kashmir want to be with Pakistan. That would be the identity and nation of choice for the people in Kashmir. Kashmir was divided, so you have Pakistan-administered Kashmir and India-administered Kashmir. The very fact that India has to have 700,000 troops in Indian-administered Kashmir is, in essence, a military foreign occupation that the people are resisting. So what happened in Kashmir, in my mind, is a false flag, without a doubt. I don't know if it was the Israelis or the Americans or the Indians who created this kind of debacle that we're in now. But you can be assured when Trump comes out and said he will unleash hell on Pakistan if they attack his friends in India. And apparently Israel had, within half an hour of this false flag attack in Kashmir, had offered support to Modi. So you have Hindu supremacism, you have Zionist supremacism, you have Gaza, and you have Kashmir. So the Zionists want to remove the Muslim indigenous population from Gaza, and you have, in my mind, supremacist Hinduism led by Modi, who wants to remove the Muslim indigenous population in Kashmir. And I believe that possibly going forward, India wants to remove the Pakistani presence in Kashmir. And what we're looking at, as people in Kashmir have said for decades, Gaza and Kashmir are two sides of the one coin. Hindu fascism and Zionist fascism are two faces of the one coin.
Yeah, I mean, and the lengths that you see a lot of the Hindu nationalists from India go through to justify Israel's genocide in Gaza, it's almost, I mean, I guess you can't say it's surprising if you understand the history, but it's still surprising because you would expect some sort of sympathy, because I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, if an Indian Jewish person decided to take up root in Israel, they wouldn't be treated like an Ashkenazi Jew. They would be treated more closely to an Ethiopian Jew. But because of that mindset of supremacy that has been put in the minds of not all Indians, but enough of them, they seem to closely align themselves with the ideology of Zionism. And now the moment that you start to align yourself with Zionism, you will use whatever justification you have to remove anybody that you deem to be inconvenient. And that means whether it be with weapons, whether it be through laws, or through bombing them into oblivion. And then because you have already okayed that, right? You've already showed that you're okay with that. You would support that when other people do it, like what Israel is doing right now in Palestine. I do believe that I find it interesting that Trump's, they're our friends. India is our friends. Pakistan can't retaliate. You know, Netanyahu, same thing. But why have they not said anything whenever India just disproportionately retaliated against an entire country for something that didn't happen within Pakistan, it happened in Kashmir, and once again, was never linked to Pakistan? It shows you that there are clearly some powers that be that have a dog in the fight, and that it leads more credence, in my opinion, to the possibility that that was a false flag and that this is part of some ultimate goal. And it could honestly be an attempt to, because Pakistan right now, they don't know exactly where Pakistan is leaning militarily with their allyship. And so I think that it could be an attempt to just make sure that they're taking out the fight in case an all-out war breaks out between Israel, the United States, and Iran. I feel like that could be a big part of why they're trying to distract Pakistan and make sure that that dog is taken out of the fight. But it is scary that we're looking more and more like we're heading towards an open hot World War III. Ironically, in the same week that we have a victory day and celebration of the Allied victory in World War I. Thank you for the call, Fry. I appreciate it. I want to go ahead and read some more MOATS donors tonight. A big shout out to our top donors who have been on to MOATS.tv since we've come on air. Scott Walker, shout out to Scott. Paul Burton, Giuliano Scianelli. Oh man, I'm gonna say your name again. That sounds really cool. Giuliano Scianelli, Nicoletti, Heinrich, or Heidenreich. I think I said it right. And a huge thanks to John Brown with the easy name to pronounce. Really big shout out to that guy who's been our biggest donor tonight. Thank you, John. We appreciate it. Please, guys, go to MOATS.tv. Go to the website, join, donate, press donate now. It's super easy. It isn't hard. And you can help keep this show going. And I don't have to be the one to tell you. You all know that George and his team does some amazing work, not just in the studio, but really all around the world, as a lot of you have already witnessed this week. Go to MOATS.tv, go to donate, help out, continue to support the show. On line 2, Kenneth from Edinburgh. What's going on, Kenneth? Talk to me.
Hello?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly fine, Kenneth. You're live.
Oh, my name's Kenneth Philly. Yeah. Well, thank you for that history about Russia. We did not know that. We were never taught that at school. What happened in the Second World War? We were not told that at all. But now I can see why Russia should be invited to the celebrations. I know that now, but at the time we were never taught. We were taught that Russia was bad. You know, it was a bad place. And also with Palestine.
I was raised in America, so it's the same thing for us.
Yeah, and also with Palestinian people, what's going on there. I can't understand why the world has forsaken the Palestinian people to what's going on there. It's wrong, and it should stop now. You know what I mean? But they're getting away with it. These Zionist people are doing these things to these poor people. They're suffering enough, and I think it's wrong. I really think it's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's wrong might be an understatement. It's evil. And you know, I don't know if you heard at the top of the show where I said Hitler might have lost and Germany might have lost, but I cannot say with any level of confidence that Nazism is lost. Because if you look at all the pursuing policies that took place after World War II and look at who ended up getting power in the most important organizations, our policies look a lot like Nazi policies. It looks a lot like they believe that one group of people deserves the dignity to have a livelihood where they can wake up and not worry about a bomb being dropped on their house, their resources being stolen from them, their homes being taken in the middle of the night, you know, not living in an apartheid state where they, you know, they can't even, they have to apply before they can leave the country to go to school, right? That's what our policies look like, not just the US, but every NATO country. That's what their policies look like worldwide in regards to the global South. And it just so closely resembles a Nazi mindset that it's just hard. You'd be hard pressed to convince me that we actually defeated the Nazis.
True, exactly what you're saying, Niko. I totally agree with you. It's wrong and it should not be happening.
Man.
And it's about time that the human race should start living together instead of hating each other.
Amen. And we have so much potential. I do like to live by the creed that there are more of us than them. It's just unfortunately for the longest time they've had a louder microphone. But thanks to social media, thanks to shows like Mother of All Talk Shows and my show For the People podcast and people like Revolutionary Blackout Network with Nick, who I just had on, who's doing mutual aid. They're literally going out there. I mean, Nick, he won't brag about himself that much, but I'll tell y'all, he's done stuff like put food together, put school supplies together, clothes together, things like that. Him and the people that he's worked with and done direct action. And the way that they're able to raise money so quickly for the community, it really makes you question the objective of these celebrities with millions of dollars who have the audacity to ask to raise money. Oh man, can y'all donate to our charitable organization, our NGO? Well, it's like, why don't you just spend the money? They're right there. The people are there on the street. You don't have to go and do a Met Gala. You don't have to go do this massive fundraiser with these elites. They're in front of you. And there are more of us than there are of them. And if we start living together, and that not only includes treating each other nicely, yeah, that's great. But it also means not allowing wrong to be done in front of you to somebody else. It means challenging evil whenever you have the opportunity to challenge evil. It means not taking a back seat and looking from the side and letting people suffer whenever you have a chance to end that suffering. And that is probably one of the most disappointing things about this Palestinian genocide. It's not just the genocide of those innocent people. It's the fact that the poorest country in the world, Yemen, is the only country that seems to have the balls to fight on behalf of them. There's so many people pushing so much rhetoric and saying so many nice things that have militaries that could actively impact the situation and are choosing not to for their own self-interest. That's the saddest part. So I 100% agree with you, Kenneth. Really appreciate those comments. And you know, we're none of us are free until Palestine is free, because as we've seen time and time again, whether it be the genocide in the Congo, whether it be the genocide in Palestine, whether it be the Holocaust. I mean, time and time and time again, we've shown just because it's not happening to you right now does not mean it isn't going to happen to you later. And if you allow it to happen right now, it will assuredly happen to you later. So it's important for us to continue to speak out about Palestine until all of Palestine is free. Appreciate those comments. Cristiana Almonte. 35 million Chinese gave their lives to stop Japan from opening a new war front against Russia. That is a new fun fact for me. I had no idea. Appreciate that information. Brian Tremblay. It says it all. When my shameful government invites a Nazi into our parliament and gives him a standing ovation. Oh, we got a Canadian in the chat. One of the worst days in Canadian history. That was a real live South Park skit. I still to this day can't believe that they allowed that to happen. You know how hard it is for you to be able to get the opportunity to speak or stand in front of a Congress. And then they give a Nazi accidentally a standing ovation. I wonder like if any buttons click whenever they're like, yeah, man, he was known for fighting against Russia. Let's clap. I'm like, hold on, what year was he born? And what year did you say he was fighting against Russia? When that man him on the other team, you would have thought somebody would have put two and two together, but and got 6, but instead they got a Z. And by Z, I mean Nazi. Francis Stevens, as General Zhuchev said, we have defeated fascism. The West will never forgive us. Oof. That's a quote right there. That is a quote right there. Hey, in Ibrahim Traore, I feel like that quote is most applicable to him at this moment. And y'all know that he said recently something he said, we're no longer fighting terrorism, even though there's a bunch of terrorists in their state, because he's aware of what's going on. In Brazil, we would say, ele está ligado. He's aware of what's going on. He knows that those terrorists are put there to impede the independence of Burkina Faso. He said, we're not fighting terrorism. We're fighting for our freedom, because he understands exactly what's happening out there in Burkina Faso. And that quote is definitely applicable to him. Torwin, I wish I could have been in Russia for V-Day. We in America could never comprehend the level of sacrifice Russia endured to destroy the Nazi ideology. We have never suffered losses on that level. And that is so 100% true. Like myself and Fiorella was saying, I literally cannot comprehend being in America, living, and I lived near Fort Bragg, in a coastal state that would have surely been invaded if a major war were to pop off in America were to be invaded. I lived in 2 coastal states actually that would have been invaded. And I cannot fathom losing 27 million people, neighbors, brothers, sisters, God family, generations, and they live next door to me on my own soil, the way that Russians can. If you experience something like that, yeah, I would have done exactly what Putin did. And to be quite frank, I know Fiorella said it, Putin is not an emotional person. And he is not. He's very strategic in how he goes about his business. Yeah, I'm not sure I could have maintained that level of calm and tranquility when NATO was beating on my doorstep after seeing what he saw, knowing what he knows, and understanding the history of Russia in that region. Like, the fact that he has shown that much restraint and this much restraint for so long is impressive in and of itself. But it also shows that, once again, they operate by a different creed. Not just him. I would say Iran probably operates by that same creed, even China to a large degree. They're not going to put innocent lives in danger if they can prevent it. Even if you know you could win, losing an innocent life is still considered a loss. And losing 27 million of those lives will give you that perspective. No one wants to put their people through that if they can prevent it. And I feel like Putin exercised a lot of restraint with that understanding and that history in mind. Thank you very much for that comment. David Marston, Werner von Braun was employed at NASA. He was asked what it is like working for the other side. He responded, "We were always working together." What? I never knew that. I never heard that quote. I gotta verify that later, because I'm gonna use that in my next show. But like I said, it's time to start considering that the Operation Paperclip wasn't about switching sides. It was just about bringing them back home. We got Loris from Manchester on line 1. Talk to me, Loris.
Hi, Niko. Great show. Great to be on the show. Thank you for having me on. I'd just like to mention something that you've mentioned, the immense sacrifices that were made by the Soviet Union in the Second World War. As you rightly said, 27 million people died from the Soviet Union fighting fascism in Europe. If it wasn't for the sacrifices made by the Soviet Union in the course of the Second World War, would have been extremely different. The Battle of Stalingrad resulted in an estimated 1 to 1.2 million casualties. The siege of Leningrad, brutal military blockade, took place from September the 8th, 1941 to the 27th of January 1944 during the Second World War. And 1.5 million deaths were resulted, both civilian and military. It seems ironic and somewhat sad that the largest country in that battle to give the greatest sacrifice, liberate Auschwitz, is not acknowledged on VE Day. And it's tragic that history is rewritten in such a way.
Yeah. And it's crazy because, you know, the moniker history is written by the victors. We can't even say that anymore. We can't even say that anymore because the victor was Russia. And yet, and still we see, like I said, Germany banning the Ukrainian flag the Russian flag from being flown, but allowing the Ukrainian flag to be flown. In the UK, you have Ukrainian soldiers marching alongside British soldiers in a form of solidarity against Russia on VE Day. On VE Day, you have, once again, the irony seems to have been lost on the leadership of Western Europe, that you are uplifting and propping up this military where you can't even take a picture, ladies and gentlemen. They can't even do an interview without a Nazi tattoo popping up during the interview. And that's who you want to march beside on VE Day while banning and shaming Russia, who openly announces they want to denazify Ukraine. They want to denazify the region. When's the last time we've heard anybody from the West say they want to denazify anything? If anything, once again, because of Operation Paperclip, we know that they were coming up with any excuse they could to bring the Nazis on their side. So witnessing this in real time, it makes the statement once again that the victor, to the victor goes the spoils, and you know, whoever wins determines history. Like, even that has been upended because the people who did win, even Stalin, Stalin got poisoned for winning, basically. And then the narrative of the KGB and CIA got flipped. People believe that, the KGB is everything the CIA is, not realizing the KGB was created as a result of the CIA, was created as a result of the Dulles, because of the Trumans, because they poisoned Stalin and everybody knew it, but they couldn't come out and say it because that would mean that the world would know that they were infiltrated. That's why the KGB was created. Every negative stereotype, every caricature they've made of Russia has always been true of the West, and specifically the United States. But those sacrifices, once again, we could never relate. And I don't want to take away from anybody who died during World War II that wasn't Russian. That's not what I'm saying. But it's completely different when you died and no one, and not only does no one care from the rest of the world, but they're trying to erase your death and erase your sacrifice, like what we're seeing today on VE Day, or what we're seeing from Ukraine, literally trying to attack Russia on the same days they used to celebrate alongside Russia. It's truly disheartening, but it lets you know how far we've come. But on a positive note, the fact that so many people are recognizing how wrong this is does give me some hope that we are moving in a different direction, and the rest of the Western world won't be able to get away with this for long. If they're not going to give them the credit, we don't need them. We don't need these governments that we don't trust, that we don't confide in, that we don't believe, to give Russia the credit. We'll do it. That's what matters. As long as the people give them credit, and as long as the people remember and acknowledge those sacrifices, that's good enough for me. Appreciate you, Loris. The MOATS podcast has been number 3 in Malaysia this week, and nearly broke the top 20 in India for politics, which is incredible, especially considering all that's going on. We'll see. It might break a little bit higher given what's going on when George gets back, because George is not going to talk about that. George is probably going to turn up whenever he gets back and talks about this war between India and Pakistan. So it's probably going to break top 5. So if you're in India, make sure you check it out. Even if you want to hate listen, the listens still count. Appreciate you. It's also held a position in the top 20 in South Africa. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen right now. And you can listen to the weekly podcast via moats.tv on the website. And once you've listened, please don't forget to leave a review and rate it too. It'll help us grow the podcast. Those reviews do actually help a lot. It pushes the show in the algorithm. Leaving a star, leaving 5 stars does actually help a lot. It helps in the algorithms. Whenever I had to get a new phone this week, I didn't even actually sign in to my Apple account, and MOATS popped up as a podcast for me because of all the stuff that I listened to, and I hadn't even signed in. So that stuff really does help out a lot. Make sure you leave a review. Make sure you like and star the MOATS podcast. We're going to go to Angel on from Tennessee.
Yes, greetings, Niko. It's an honor to speak to you. I'm a big fan of RBN as well as George. And I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago, so I come in the spirit of Kwame Ture and Claudia Cumberbatch Jones. Before I get to BRICS so before I get to my comment on the India-Pakistan issue, I just wanted to say that I think it's a gross injustice for Russia to be disinvited to an event that is only possible because of their sacrifices. So I'll just preface my comment with that. When I was growing up as a child in Trinidad, cricket was a big deal, and I knew Imran Khan as the captain of the Pakistan cricket team. That was what he was known for. I forgot about that. And I forgot about that. Well, yeah, he was, man. He was an athlete, and he was kind of a chick magnet at the time. Even my mother and my aunts were victims of that. He was a good-looking guy. But, the thing about it is that I have ancestors in India and Pakistan because my ancestors were brought from India to replace the slaves in the sugarcane plantations. So, I have East Indian origins, but I'm the product of Black culture. Like they divided and conquered the British Empire just as they did everywhere else, and that is the cause of what's going on in Palestine, and it's what the cause of what's going on right now in between Pakistan and India, because they just went and drew a line with the Balfour Declaration in Palestine in 1917, and then they did the same thing in 1947 between India and Pakistan. And if you really look at it, the British Empire is foundational in a lot of these issues that we're seeing today. And now it becomes very dangerous because both of these nations are armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons. And I just think that... Which, by the way, the British Empire also helped to achieve, by the way, which is ironic. Indeed, Niko. But what I really want to say is people need to understand that, like, India, Modi just had a trip to the U.S. in February, right? He met with Trump at the White House. Mm-hmm. So I think they were instigating this from even then. I think I think its purpose is twofold. I think it's to take an eye away from Israel, who's getting a lot of public pressure right now, and the society is crumbling. It's on the verge of a civil war, and rightly so. It's on fire, literally, So, and I have Palestinian relatives. So I have very in-depth knowledge of this issue. But remember that India sent a bunch of labor over so that they wouldn't have to depend on any Palestinian labor in Israel when this conflict started. So Modi has been very supportive of the Zionist entity all the way through. Them being out of BRICS would throw a wrench in the infrastructure plans that Russia has with India and Iran, because India is like en route part of that strategy, but, you know, they could be replaced with another I, like maybe Ireland. So those are my comments. What say you, Niko?
No, I mean, I agree with everything. So I agree with everything you said. At this point, honestly, India remaining a part of BRICS might be problematic because, like I said, they're acting with a level of predictability that doesn't bode well for the rest of the BRICS countries. I know that somebody said earlier that Russia gets along well with Israel. No, I feel like that should be clarified. Russian oligarchs get along well with Israeli oligarchs, and largely because a lot of them are related. Putin puts up with Israel because of the large Jewish Israeli population, but Putin does not like Bibi Netanyahu. He is not a fan of his. They do not get along. And I feel like the only thing holding Russia back from getting more involved in the situation with Israel, and not just against Palestine, but Israel and how they're behaving in the entire region, is the fact that Putin does not want to overstretch himself. And he is aware that if he gets involved, if Russia gets involved with Israel in a war against Iran, that will 100% spark off a world war. There's no, because everybody who's allied with both Iran and Russia would have to get involved. I think that could also obviously upset the balance of BRICS, so that everybody would be forced to choose a side, et cetera, et cetera. So I agree 100% that like that's Israel has a lot to do with it, and this might be being used as a distraction to keep people from paying attention to Israel. The fact that their economy is failing, like what Nick talked about. Yemen, the poorest country in the world, what they're doing in the Red Sea is actually working, which is why the U.S. felt compelled to send troops or to send ships there to help to begin with. And while we also need to remember, this isn't the first time they did it. They tried to do this during the Biden administration. They tried to even build a coalition. You know what happened? Everybody said, nah, y'all got that. We can't win. And it didn't work, which is why Israel's economy is suffering so badly. So there is a chance that India is just playing a role. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that Modi met with Trump, because I feel like that point could be bolstered even more so by the fact that we know that JD Vance was in India recently. So Modi met with Trump, JD Vance was in India, that attack happens, and now there's a whole military operation that doesn't make sense. It's a disproportionate response to a attack that killed a few against a country that never claimed responsibility, and there's no proof that they're linked to it. So I 100% agree with you. Appreciate you, my fellow Caribbean. Like I said, being West Indian myself, I'm Bajan. So for those of you who don't know, we have a very similar history, except for the majority of the Bajan Desis came from Bangladesh, because they couldn't, and they stopped in Barbados because the majority of the West Indies was primarily filled with Hindus. So a lot of history linked there. But yeah, this conflict between India and the Hindus and Muslim and Pakistan and Kashmir goes back centuries. And I hate the fact that you're able to see religion be used to do the empire's bidding. But that's what's happening right now for sure. Appreciate you, Angel. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for calling in. We're gonna go to the polls. What was our final results? I really hope Twitter got their stuff together, because y'all, I'm trying to tell you, I'm going to Twitter after this. I'm not playing. We're going to have a conversation. Should Russia be at the VE Day celebrations? On Telegram, 94% still say yes. 6% say no. Good job, Telegram. X, 50-50. Oh, Lord, baby Jesus. All right. I guess it's better than what it was. No, it's not better than what it was. Actually, I think that's worse than what it was. Why are y'all getting worse? Man, you know what? I'm starting to think some of y'all doing this on purpose. We're going to have a conversation. YouTube comment section, 90% say yes, 10% say no. YouTube stream, 93% say yes, 7% say no. And we have a total of 8,699 votes. So the majority of people believe Russia should be at the VE Day celebrations, or at least, in my opinion, should be invited, even if they did make the decision to say, hell no, we don't want to go, because why would you? You see these NATO countries trying to take over your country and encroach on your sovereignty. I would understand why they wouldn't want to go, but they should at least be invited, because once again, there would be no VE Day celebrations without Russia. Final call, Maurice from Orlando. What's going on, Maurice? Talk to me.
Hello? Yes.
I can hear you, Maurice. What's going on?
Yes, hello. Shout out to Nick, JB, B, Combo Couch, you, and the MOATS crew. First of all, now that out of the way, I do not celebrate D-Day or VE Day as an American naturalized citizen because, in my honest opinion, as you stated earlier, the West gave the Nazis refuge, so why would Russia want to celebrate with people who gave the Nazis refuge?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, those people should probably be inviting them, but I agree with you. As long as you're giving refuge to Nazis, and this isn't just like a recent thing, right? This isn't, yeah, they gave a refuge to a bunch of Ukrainians recently, but we're talking about giving refuge to Nazis, helping them change their identities, right? Now, these Nazis weren't even contributing members of society. They're like, yeah, come over here, man. We're going to give you a new identity and a new birth certificate in Canada, Argentina, Colombia. A lot of them went to Bogota. Even Brazil, I found out, actually were forced to take a lot of them. So, and I know that it didn't only happen in the Americas. That happened a lot in Europe as well. So there weren't even just members of Operation Paperclip that were moved and protected. It was like a bunch of people. Even if they're like, hey man, our bag, come over here, let's take care of you. Please, just don't tell people that you were on our side, please. And by the way, that's actually something we see the United States do with fascists all the time. Whenever someone is applying for a refugee status to enter the United States, it isn't because, and they get accepted normally, like 90% of the time. It isn't because they're on the right side of history. I don't know if y'all are aware of that. Like if there was a black Venezuelan, for example, applying for refuge in the United States, political refuge specifically in the United States, and a white Venezuelan who just so happened to hate Maduro and hates Hugo Chavez, like the white Venezuelan is probably going to get the refugee status accepted. And the black Venezuelan, they're going to act like that person doesn't even exist, right? And that's what refugee status in the U.S. actually means. It means you are fighting on our behalf, and that is our way to cover down, which is why the majority of Miami Cubans, you would believe really the majority of all Cubans are white. You would think that. But the majority of Cubans are black. It's just the majority of the Miami Cubans are white because they're the ones who benefited from segregation. And they were forced to flee, or they chose to flee rather, and got benefits for doing so whenever Fidel Castro desegregated Cuba and put it back in the hands of the black people and the mestizos and the indigenous. And that's why the white Cubans came to the U.S., got automatic citizenship, given refugee status, given grants, given business loans, educated, given jobs, given networking opportunities. And black Cubans stayed in Cuba because it was actually more beneficial for them to a large degree to remain there. If they came to the U.S., do you know the number one ethnic group that is terrorized by Miami police is the black Cuban? They would have been terrorized because everyone knows whose side they probably would have aligned with. So if you're getting refugee status in the U.S., it's probably because you're on the wrong side of history. And that doesn't seem to have changed. It seems to be a continuation of the norm whenever the U.S. and the West have traditionally protected Nazis and fascists alike. So appreciate that, Maurice. Appreciate the shout out. We want to read some comments before we get up out of here. Abdullah Ibn Abdullah, have Niko on permanently. Oh, I appreciate it. I can't replace George. I need to watch George, so I can't replace him permanently, but maybe we could do like a little co-host show. You know, I'm always down to co-host. So Jim Passatore, damn George, new George is pretty good. Oh, damn, new George is pretty good. I appreciate him. It's the jacket, bro. I told you I brought out the pastel pretty boy George jacket specifically for this occasion because I wanted to be as much like George as I could, and I don't have the blue eyes, so I at least tried to pull off the blue jacket. I appreciate it. A concerned patriot, Niko, you're a Bayesian, woohoo. Yeah, I am. You've just gone further up in my estimation, my son. Keep up your amazingly good work. Ben will be proud. You did a great job standing in for GG tonight. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And yes, I am Bayesian. That's where all the random freckles and my obscure abstract features come from. fun story, guys. I used to actually get picked first a lot for soccer when I was growing up, and people would like judge me and like kind of pick me last or look at me kind of weird. And I primarily play basketball, but when I tried to play basketball, if they didn't know me, they would pick me like last because they didn't think I could play basketball, but that was my primary sport. And I had no idea how much implicit racial bias actually comes in to people's decisions about how they treat you when you enter a room. Because I was living in the South, and y'all know in the South, yeah, I'm black, guys. I am black. But in the South, there's different kinds of black people. And it is primarily consisted of what I like to affectionately refer to as family reunion black people. Family reunion black people are different. That means they have generations of family in the South, usually can trace their roots back to slave days. And we don't necessarily look like we come from the same background, even though we are black. But like in Brazil, for example, people just assume I'm Brazilian. And unless I tell them I'm not, because I speak Portuguese and all that good stuff. So it's very interesting when you're Bayesian and you go back and look at the history of how Bayesian people have kind of been treated. We're like kind of our own thing in America. And we have like a lot of celebrities people don't even know are Bayesian. LL Cool J, Megan Good, A$AP Rocky. Y'all know about Rihanna. But they even treated Rihanna like Jamaican at first, which was strange because Bayesian wasn't really, they didn't have like their own established culture the same way Jamaicans or Trinis did. So very interesting history there, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you. Mario Morais. Thank you, Niko. I'm glad there are many who are on the same page as George Galloway. It's people like you who make a difference because you're in the right place in history. I appreciate that. And I owe a lot of that to George. Like I said, I come to George to get educated on a lot of things that, a lot of new issues that I wouldn't have even been paying attention to. And also to just get analysis, refreshing analysis from an older person who actually understands where we're at in the world and has that benefit of hindsight. I feel like I am as good as I am what I do because of a lot of the experiences that I've had. Because everybody, in my opinion, is limited. No matter how good you are, what you do, you're limited by your experience. And because George has had so much experience, he has so much benefit of hindsight. He's participated in politics. He's won in politics. He's lost in politics. He's had his, maybe had elections stolen. He's been blackballed. He's spoken, did public speaking. He's spoken in front of people who hate him. He's spoken in front of people who loved him. But he has the benefit of experience and hindsight combined with information and facts and a willingness. And it's the most important thing before we get out of here, guys. There are not a lot of white guys who will be willing to have a black person come on there and host their show. And I'm going to say that. And it's important to say that. There are not a lot of white guys who have the following that George Galloway does and would actually even interview me or a black person. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but it's the truth. What George Galloway did here tonight, even though he's not here, was actually make history. And a lot of y'all probably didn't even realize it because this is who George Galloway is. George believes in everything he preaches. And everything he preaches is followed by action. And that is why my respect for George has been so high since the first time I've watched him. Before we sign off, I got a funny story for y'all. My favorite show actually was George's show for about 2 to 3 years. The first time I got a chance to do a 15-minute interview with George, I was on vacation. I was scheduled to leave and fly back to the States that day. I moved my Airbnb time, ladies and gentlemen. I bought more equipment. I paid to move my flight because I wanted 15 minutes with George Galloway. Because to me, it was that much of an honor that he would even consider having me on the show. That is a true story. I was staying in Copacabana actually at the time. And then as I began to watch his show more and more and more, I'm like, wow, this is just really who George is. I thought George was calling me because he wanted my opinion because I was in Brazil and that's in the election we're going on. No, George wants a diversity of opinion. He wants a diversity of experience and he appreciates it. And the fact that he couples experience with facts, morality is what makes this show and George so amazing. So appreciate you guys. Make sure I like this video. Make sure you subscribe to MOATS. Make sure you donate on MOATS TV. That's on MOATS.tv. And follow me on For the People Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Real Niko House. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, always remember more than anything else, find your balance. And thank you for watching the mother of all talk shows.